Kelsey Berreth was a beautiful young mother who went missing in Woodland Park, Colorado in November of 2018. This case gained widespread attention due to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, the subsequent investigation, and also the fact that the Chris Watts case had just happened just north in Frederick, Colorado. Patrick Frazee, Kelsey's fiance and the father of their child, was arrested and charged with her murder. Krystal Kenney, Patrick's girlfriend, a key witness in the case, also became involved. Kenney was a former girlfriend of Frazee and provided crucial information to the investigators. According to Kenney's testimony, Frazee asked her to help him kill Berreth, and she claimed to have witnessed Frazee beating Berreth to death with a baseball bat on Thanksgiving Day in 2018. Kenney admitted to cleaning up the crime scene and disposing of evidence at Frazee's request. Patrick Frazee was arrested in December of 2018, charged with first-degree murder, solicitation to commit murder, and tampering with a deceased body. The prosecution argued that Frazee was motivated by custody issues and a desire for control over the child. The trial took place in late 2019, and Patrick Frazee pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Krystal Kenney cooperated with the prosecution and agreed to testify against Frazee as part of a plea deal. In November 2019, Frazee was found guilty on all counts, including the murder of Kelsey Berreth. Patrick Frazee was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 156 years for the other charges. Krystal Kenney, as part of her plea deal, pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence and received only a 3-year sentence, with the possibility of parole after serving only 18 months. Krystal Kenney is now free on parole. Way back in 2019, I had the opportunity and the privilege to interview Kelsey Berreth's best friend from childhood. And I want was last seen on Thanksgiving Day 2018. She was last spotted at a Safeway supermarket in Woodland Park, Colorado. Since Kelsey's disappearance, her fiance, Patrick Frazee, has been charged with her murder and 3 counts of solicitation and murder. His girlfriend, Krystal Kenney, has also been charged with tampering of evidence. Tonight, I sit down with Kelsey's friend from childhood, Nicole, and she tells me what she wants the world to know about her friend, Kelsey. Well, welcome to J is for Justice. I have a very special guest today with me. Her name is Nicole, and she is a childhood friend of Kelsey Berreth. And she was so kind to join me in kind of filling us in on the person that Kelsey is. And, she's known her for how many years, Nicole?
About 20 years.
20 years, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to kind of just get into telling us how you met Kelsey and your relationship?
Sure, yeah. We both grew up in the Moses Lake area, Moses Lake, Washington. I guess this is national, so I should talk about location. And her family started attending the Seventh-day Adventist church that I also attended in Moses Lake when I was 12 and Kelsey was 9. So that puts us back about 20 years. And it's a very small town, if you know the area, central Washington, and very small church. And within that church, a very small church school. So we both attended the church school through grade school on up. So I spent a lot of time with her and her family. They were like a second family to me. I didn't really do sleepovers a whole lot, but I would do sleepovers at the Berreth home because
you felt comfortable there.
I had
Yeah,
friends like that too.
hmm yeah. Her older brother was in my grade, so um, our ninth grade year, just for example, there was people in our class, so we
How
were
many?
three in the
Three.
ninth. Yeah, so very small school. I think on
Wow.
average we would have anywhere from 25 to 35 students in 9 grades. So it was a very
So it's
small.
safe to say everybody knew everybody.
Exactly. and
Wow.
and not only school but also church, like I mentioned, but then we also had the Pathfinder Club, which is kind of like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, where we would get together a week and we'd go camping on the weekends and earn honors and badges and do fundraising
Nice.
and community events. So we literally, our lives were intertwined very closely from
Yeah, it sounds like
a
it. It
young
sounds
age.
like it.
Mhm.
So did you guys continue through after high school, continuing to talk, or did you kind of lose touch for a little bit and start talking again?
It was a little bit on and off after I went to high school. I actually went to a boarding academy, so it wasn't too far from Moses Lake, but that took me out of the area more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
So from the time that I started attending high school until I moved back to Moses Lake, I ended up getting married in 2008, and then moved back to Moses Lake. And she was still living there at the time. We were able to reconnect, and
Oh,
so from then we reconnected, but then I moved up to the Spokane area, and we would see each other about once or twice a year. When I got pregnant, she came to my baby shower with her mom and made me a super cute little cocoon thing that the baby would go inside and just sleep
oh,
most of the time. So I've got pictures of both of my girls in that cocoon. It's
oh,
just
that's nice.
I'm cherishing those memories for
I
sure.
bet. I bet.
But in the recent years, I would see her about, like I said, once or twice a year. Her parents moved to North Idaho probably about 3 or 4 years, probably about 3 years ago. I can't remember for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's fairly close to where I live in Eastern Washington. So we would get together with them more often than what we used to when they lived in Moses Lake. So she actually lived with her parents for a little while before moving down to Colorado. So I would see them there, and then she would come up to visit. The last couple of years, she would come up to visit her parents, and I would oftentimes be in the area when
Mm-hmm.
she was visiting, so I'd get to see her as well.
Did she have a steady boyfriend through those times?
Um, I know she dated someone when I lived in Moses Lake. But I never met him, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know who she was. I believe 2016. I believe that's when she moved down to Colorado because she had met Patrick online.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know exactly when she met him online, but it was 2016 when she moved down there.
Okay. So she was a pilot instructor.
Hmm.
And so she went to school for that, I
Hmm.
imagine.
Yeah.
And she went to school there in Washington State.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. In Moses Lake, they have a community college called Big Bend, and she earned her certification there as well as instructing there. She began instructing there at Big Bend, I believe.
So she found the job and it kind of went along with her move to Colorado, you think? Or you
I
don't
believe
know, like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it Patrick? Was it made her search a job over in that area?
I believe she searched for the job because she had met Patrick online.
Mm-hmm.
That's and I didn't hash out the details with her,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I remember.
She was driving quite a ways to get to work from
Hmm.
where she was living near
Hmm.
him in Woodland Park. Um, and you continued speaking to her after her move to Colorado.
Hmm.
Did you see her
Occasionally.
when she would come home, or was it just kind of like an occasional text or call, like "How you doing? Everything's going good" type thing?
So after she moved to Colorado, my main point of contact with her was through her parents. I would see her parents quite often.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I heard she was pregnant, and it was perfect because I've got two little girls that are actually 2 years old. My youngest is 2 years older than baby Kaylee. So just as she became pregnant, I was starting to clear out my baby things. So
Mm-hmm.
I would be in touch with Cheryl quite often, asking, okay, does Kelsey need this? Or actually, I ended up getting Kelsey's phone number, and I would text her the different things that I had and
Oh, how
that
nice!
I needed.
So it worked out perfect. You were at that time where you were able to I don't need this anymore. I don't need the bouncy seat anymore. You can have
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I love the fact that it was going to Kelsey because she was like my little sister. That's kind of how I always viewed her.
Yeah.
She always had a real special place in my heart. I mean, you can always donate things, but when it goes to someone that's special.
Right. Right. And that's their daughter. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm really sorry for your loss. It's traumatic. It's traumatic to hear you talk about your friend, and you're holding it together very well. Let me tell you that, because I've seen your other
Well,
interviews you've done, and you just want, you just want to talk about your friend and get who she is out there, not just who people are speculating she is through the press. And I think that's commendable of you.
Well, I'll tell you, my first few interviews were pretty rough. I was trying to speak through tears because this has invoked a lot of emotion.
I'm
For
sure. I'm sure it has. So
And
have you gotten any flack for speaking out? And because not a whole lot of people have come out and said, I knew Kelsey.
Actually, there's several of us that have done interviews, but I think the major press is interested in details on the case and
Mm-hmm.
the details that are exciting to people. And I don't have that. A lot of the people that I knew up here that grew up with her didn't have that because we lived up here still. So we didn't really
Right.
we didn't get to know Patrick. In fact, most of us never met Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the details on the case that kind of the mainstream media is asking for. Even though, I mean, I don't even know how many interviews I've done with national news stations, but I've only seen like 2 or 3 actually aired because there's
You
just not
don't
a
have the
lot.
information they're wanting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot. So we are speaking out, but it's just not getting out there, which
It's
makes me thankful that
right.
you're doing this. And it's gonna, sometimes it takes the little guys to really get out there
Yeah.
and give.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I love hearing about Kelsey. And, I followed this case since she was missing. And you see the pictures of her, and you see the picture of her and Patrick, and she's holding the baby, and you wonder what went wrong, what happened to this girl. And there's all sorts of scenarios, and we don't know who she is. We have no idea what kind of person this is. So when Patrick starts talking about all of these rumors about Kelsey. See, I'm telling you, all these K's screw me up. But when he talks about Kelsey and says all of these things, that she is mentally ill, that she checked into a facility because she was suicidal, that she put a gun to her head, all of these things paint a picture of a person.
Mhm.
And it's not really fair to only get his side of who Kelsey is.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Do you know anything about her mental health or a treatment center that she went to?
I did hear that attended a depression recovery program, and it's actually one that I'm familiar with because I took a friend there
Mm-hmm.
um, probably about 5, 6 years ago now. A friend of mine was dealing with depression because she had lost a baby in a car accident. So I
Oh my
actually went
gosh.
to that specific treatment place, and it's amazing. It's not your typical um, program. It's lifestyle and health.
Is it inpatient?
Yes, yeah.
It is an
So
inpatient. Okay.
mhm,
But it's
yeah,
more of a therapy based,
yeah. It's a 10-day program where you do hydrotherapy, you do exercise, spiritual counseling, and
finding
training.
inner peace, basically. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
I'm tied down in a straight jacket and they're giving
No,
me
no,
medication.
not
It's a
at all.
peaceful find inner peace and get to the root cause of why you're feeling so down and bad.
Yeah, just one point on that. The Kelsey that I knew before she moved to Colorado was not one that I would not have suspected that she would need a treatment center like that. And of course, there's no shame in going through
Mhm.
something that I battled depression when my parents were divorcing, and afterwards.
Sure. I mean, we all
Real-
have at one time or another.
yeah.
That's nothing to hold against anybody.
Mhm.
And, everybody goes through their trials and tribulations.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So I can imagine if, the reasons that she may have wanted to go, obviously there was some issues in the relationship we can see now. Of
Hmm.
course, I didn't realize anything until after the fact, unfortunately.
Right, right. So did she, from what you know, did she have any friends there in Woodland Park or in Pueblo where she worked? We haven't really heard of any friends over in Colorado that have come out.
I don't know any of the people down there, but I have heard that she had friends, friends from work and people that they associated with through rodeo events.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That was
just
another thing that Patrick had brought up, was that she wouldn't come home after work and she was out to dinner with friends from work.
mhm,
And it sounds like if that was true, he didn't like that. He didn't like her being out having fun with friends without him.
mhm.
I mean, that's kind of what I get from it. So you never heard anything from her. I mean, when was the last time you guys spoke?
In July of this last year, she was visiting her family, and I was actually my husband and I stayed at her parents' house at the same time that she was there, and we were able to spend the evening together. So, and that's the first time I saw baby Kaylee, which was just amazing.
Oh,
She was
I was just going to
playing.
ask you that, if you got to meet the baby. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and I just tell you, she's the most precious little thing.
She looks just like her mom from the
Oh,
pictures I've seen. She's adorable.
she really does, and just this, the same bright, happy personality that
Oh,
Kelsey
I'm
has.
glad that her parents have Kaylee to, kind of help them get through this. 'Cause I
Oh,
can't imagine what they're going through.
mhm.
I can't even imagine. And they're being drugged through, a custody hearing after custody hearing. And it's just, I can't imagine after losing your daughter in that way, especially after all of the details that came out in the preliminary hearing. It's absolutely disgusting. And
Mhm.
I have no words for it. I have no words for that level of evil. I really don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know if how you heard all of the details. I was following Twitter from a reporter that was actually in the courtroom. And when the tweets kept coming through, it just got worse and worse and worse as it just kept coming through. And it was nothing that I could have ever imagined that this poor girl went through. Okay, so let's move on to their engagement.
Mhm.
So we've heard conflicting stories that they were engaged. We've heard that they weren't engaged, that he was with Krystal. Can you settle any of the rumors behind that? Were they actually engaged?
Yes, yes, they were engaged, and to her family's knowledge, to all of our knowledge, that engagement was never called off. So
Wow.
there's been some conflicting things, but now that we can see in the court records, it was what Patrick told Cheryl when she was checking in to see why she hadn't heard from Kelsey. That's when he told her, well, we broke up and she needed some time. So, to our knowledge, they were still together and things were fine.
And from what it sounds like during the prelim, it came out that even at the middle of the night before the murder, she was out at Walmart getting him medication because he wasn't feeling good.
Okay, I didn't know anything about
Yeah,
that.
that I guess he supposedly has an ulcer or something to that effect, and his stomach was hurting him, and she went to Walmart at like 3 a.m. and got him medicine and took it to him.
Oh wow.
And I heard that, and I was just like, okay, this was not a couple that she thought was broken up.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that for somebody you're not currently, still in a relationship with.
Yeah, if there
So,
was any issues, if that was me in that position and we'd had issues, I'd say, go get your own medicine.
well, exactly, especially in the middle of the night. I mean,
Mhm,
it just doesn't make any sense. And then we also had it's kind of a weird story, but a friend of mine that lives in Colorado,
mhm.
and you may or may not have already heard about this through Woodland Park Underground, but she owns some property there in Guffey. And they had received an email from the Property Owners Association that Patrick was renting property. He was leasing that property, and it happened to be partially on her land. I think she has 50 some acres out there. I mean, it's just tons of land.
Mhm.
And she said to me, oh my God, they want our signature because they may do a search out there. You know, they want to kind of be proactive and get these signatures, because there was like hundreds of owners that were even out of state. They had to gather all these signatures to get permission to search if they needed to. And I said, no way. I said, can I let Mike know about this? She says, yeah, that's fine. So they gave him his permission to go out there with his drone. And he went and droned over the area. He took his kids out there. You know, he didn't see anything. Everything's snow covered. He could barely drive back on the roads because they're like impassable. There's so much snow out there. So fast forward to the preliminary, his wife was in court with one of her friends because he couldn't be there that day. So she was there with the phone and tweeting. And the first thing they do is call out that is Michael Dalton in the courtroom. And everyone's kind of looking around, and they have sequestered him as a witness.
Okay.
So as the day went on, and I was like, what? Why would Dad with a phone be a witness? Well, he had also droned over old Ma Frazee's house, right? Sheila's house. Mm-hmm. So we're assuming they want that drone footage. But it was kind of coincidental when it all came out that the phones pinged in the area of Guffey near that property. So it was a little strange how it all came together, you know. And I really do appreciate, you know, all of the stuff that Mike has done as far as looking into this case. I know it's near and dear to his heart. He's very emotional about it. He, you know, she lived on his block. Mm-hmm. You know, it really brings it home for him, and he gets a lot of scrutiny for being as involved as he is, but I think he really feels it. You know, he feels like that could have been anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and it's real when you sit in that courtroom. A friend of mine, her daughter was murdered at age 14, and I sat through the whole trial, and it's so different. It's not court TV when you're sitting in there. Those are real people. Those are, you know, family members and victims, and then you have the perp sitting there, and it's just so tense and emotional. So I get it. I get I get him, and I think he gets treated pretty unfairly for it. But with that being said, I was brought up the property because in the letter that my friend got, it also said that on the gate to the property where there's a keypad and there's cameras, and they had stated, you know, that they were very disheartened about Kelsey, you know, being missing, and that she was caught on their cameras on four-wheelers with Patrick back in September. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, this changes the whole dynamic. This was not a couple that was broken up. Mm-mm. They were not broken up. She was out there herding cattle with him in September. Mm-hmm. So he had her completely duped. And that was when it really started just boggling my mind. Wow, this girl had no idea that at the same time she was riding four-wheelers with him out there, he was concocting this plan with Krystal. It's sick. It's so sick. It makes me so mad that someone can go.
Another thing that's been so hard for us as friends and family of the Berreths to swallow is the fact there's so many people apparently that knew that he was planning on murdering her.
Yep.
So many people.
So many people could have saved her life.
Yeah, and yet they chose silence, and that's the danger of our society. Mm-hmm. It really is. I didn't plan on going into that, but it's the truth. People choose silence over being vulnerable, and you know they don't want to stand out and cost Kelsey her life.
Yep. I mean, nowadays we don't even know our neighbors really. You know, everybody keeps to themselves. Nobody wants to be bothered. No one, like you said, no one wants to be scrutinized, and it's unfortunate because we have, I can't even say it, that we have the lawyers in Idaho that could have helped. We have her friend that could have helped. We have probably his mother that could have helped, you know, just to name a few, because I really have a hard time believing that she had no idea. Because the testimony of Krystal is that they burned this tote and she saw it being burned.
Mhm.
So I have a hard time believing that she doesn't, especially now she's pleading the fifth. She doesn't want to speak. To me, that speaks volumes.
Mhm.
If that was my son, I would be so ashamed, so ashamed, you know. So it to me, and I'm not speaking for you, but it tells me a lot about their character, especially you couple that with the support or the custody issues,
Yeah.
kicking these people when they're down.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was in that situation, and there's been so many stories of people not even realizing that they were either married to or the child of someone that was committing horrible crimes while they were living with them. So, I mean, that's not completely unheard of. At
Mm-hmm.
first, I was really shocked that, and thinking that, yeah, she obviously has to be involved, but it's not unheard of. It's actually quite common that these people that have commit such horrible crimes keep it very well hidden from the people that they want to have a good face towards.
Mm-hmm.
So you really don't know. It's just you never know.
Right, right. I mean, it is all together. It is possible that, his mom just saw all the good in him
Mm-hmm.
too. You just
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, I don't know.
But obviously this Krystal, for whatever reason, went along with his plans, even though she chickened out 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard about all of those different scenarios that she testified to. Is there anything about that you would like to talk about, or that doesn't really add up with you? Just, I mean, personally, as you hear everything unfolding.
Well, the first thing that jumps out to me is that her best friend is claiming that she was terrified of Patrick and afraid for her life, that
Hmm.
that he had basically threatened her that if she didn't do it, you know,
Hmm.
he, anyway, these things. Um, if you're terrified of somebody, you don't go down there on multiple occasions to commit a murder for them.
Right. I
That's just
agree.
like, that's crime. That's
Hmm.
crime 101 or just common sense 101.
Especially when you live in another state and you already have all of that space between you. Yeah.
Exactly. She was in no danger at all whatsoever.
Hmm.
Um, he had to have wanted Kelsey to be gone. I mean, that's the only thing I can imagine.
Hmm.
And girls do crazy things when they're jealous. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And I don't, there's people have testified that Krystal was a great person. Well, maybe she was when there wasn't a love triangle. We just don't
Right.
know. But
Right.
I don't buy the story that she was terrified of for her life, because
Yeah.
there's so
I
many
don't
things that
either.
you could
I don't
do
either. I
than
don't
to
feel
go
like that's
try
the
Kelsey.
behavior of someone who's scared.
Yeah,
Someone who's scared.
yeah.
And the other part of it, when she talks about bringing this coffee to Kelsey.
Hmm.
Now, knowing Kelsey, okay, this random woman comes to her door with and happens to have her favorite Starbucks drink. Do you think that Kelsey would drink that?
I think she'd be very suspicious. She's a smart girl.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I try to put myself in her shoes, and some women coming to my door going, "Hey, I'm your neighbor and you helped me find my dog and I got you a Starbucks." I'd be like, "Whoa, I'm not touching that." So, I mean, maybe because I watch too many crime shows, but you're
Mhm.
right. She's a smart girl. And but KK goes on to say, "Well, I didn't put anything in it because I chickened out." And my point that I've said before on that is, if you didn't put anything in it, why would you go to the door and hand her the coffee? If you didn't put anything in it, what would be the point,
Mhm.
unless she had never seen her? But I have a hard time believing she didn't know what Kelsey looked like.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure she knew already. That's part of the jealousy. That's
Mhm.
part of the jealousy. And also knowing that, Patrick and her had a baby together.
Mhm.
But the whole coffee thing is so bizarre to me. And her aunt was in the car and waited in the car while she delivered this coffee. So that could potentially be yet another person
Wow.
who could have stopped this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
I would have questions as to why my niece was giving coffee to a random stranger.
They went to a bar and had a beer before they went and delivered the coffee. So that tells me something. Like, sometimes people go and have a drink like, all right, I gotta get my guts up about this to do it. That's just the feel I get about that.
Hmm.
And then the other 2 times, obviously, she didn't even get out of the car. She states she just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then she came and cleaned up after him. He called her in, and she drove from Idaho and came and cleaned.
Yeah, there's just a whole pile of things that don't add up, and I think we'll learn a lot more as the details continue.
Yeah, for sure, because they're not going to show all their cards at the preliminary.
I think we'll learn a lot more as the details continue.
Yeah, for sure, because they're not going to show all their cards at the preliminary. Do you think that Kelsey's parents will attend the trial?
I would think probably so. Yeah. I haven't talked to them about it. I can't imagine wanting to attend. I think that would be the worst thing in the world. But
I thought about them being at that preliminary, and I asked Mike's wife if they were there, and she said no, we didn't see them. And I was like, well, thank God, because how could you sit through that?
Mm-hmm. I don't know this for sure, but it's possible that her dad was there. I know because of Kaylee, with Cheryl having the baby, that would be very difficult to drive all the way down there with a baby and then, find a babysitter hearing. So
for sure.
So Cheryl did stay home, but I think Daryl may have been there because, if the family doesn't show up, then that just raises more questions, unfortunately, in the public's eyes. So
right. You're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in a situation like that. Yeah. Those poor people. What kind of relationship did Kelsey have with her parents?
They were very close. In fact, I remember thinking, this is long before I even had kids, when I was first married and I moved back to Moses Lake, I would see Kelsey and her mom going out to lunch together. I ran into them at a little cafe in Moses Lake one day, and I thought, I hope I have a relationship like that with my daughters someday. I mean, that's just something that every mother-daughter wants to have, and they had it. They were just connected to the hip, basically. And she was very close with her brother and dad as well. But there was a real special bond between Kelsey and her mom.
Mm-hmm. What was it like, growing up and going over there, and what's her family unit like with her brother and her parents?
They're a very tight-knit family. The Berreth family as a whole tends to be more behind the scenes. They're pretty quiet people. So, I mean, when I saw Cheryl do her first interview on national television, I was just blown away at her strength to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing to do for anybody, but especially knowing Cheryl, she had to really gather some strength and had to be praying big time before she did that, because it's not an easy thing for anybody, like I said. But they're a very quiet family. They don't like being in the spotlight, even when it's a good thing. So that was very difficult for her to do.
There was a lot of chatter on social media after her interview aired, and there was a lot of people kind of criticizing Cheryl for being, kind of I don't want to say secretive, but maybe not really outspoken about details with what was going on with Kelsey, which made people believe and kind of speculate that they weren't very close, that her mom really didn't know what was going on there in Colorado. And it sounds like it's the opposite of that.
Very much so. It's a long distance from North Idaho to Colorado, and yet they would make the drive there multiple times a year to spend time with Kelsey, and Kelsey would fly home quite often to be with her family.
They would drive all the way from Washington.
Yes.
Wow.
Her dad does not like airplanes, which is kind of ironic because Kelsey is such a devoted pilot. Mm-hmm. He does not like flying, so they would drive more often than not.
Wow, that's a hike. Mm-hmm. So did they ever meet Patrick?
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Hmm. Do we know why Kelsey and Patrick didn't live together, or did they ever live together when she moved out there?
Um, as far as I know, they never lived together, but I didn't, again, I didn't keep real close tabs on her after she moved to Colorado. Just different lives. That's about the time that I was in the middle of having my babies, and so I
Yeah.
didn't hear a whole lot. But I mean, I would assume for myself, knowing that he lived with his mom and not a huge place, I probably wouldn't want to live. I mean, I love my mother-in-law, but I wouldn't want to live, the multiple family thing going on there.
It's just interesting that they were engaged, but they didn't reside together. And I just kind of wondered if there was any insight on that, if he didn't want to leave his mom's house, or if it was easier for him because of what he did for a living, to be right there, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's probably multiple factors there. Not only the multi generations living together, but I also have horses and animals. It's very difficult to live apart from them and still care for them, because you have to feed them twice a day at least to make sure that they're well taken care of. And so he had horses as well as cattle. So, living in the same vicinity as the livestock is
right. That makes sense.
Pretty demanding thing.
That makes sense.
And then the other factor too, it could have been part of Kelsey's belief system. It's very common in the Seventh-day Adventist Church to not live together before you're married.
Got you.
They didn't
Okay.
have a baby together, but it could be something that maybe I know she wasn't planning on having a baby yet, so I can just maybe imagine the circumstances around there that she had changed her mind on certain things.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And maybe he didn't like that. Was she pretty independent, Kelsey? Pretty independent girl?
Yeah, and that's something special about her character as well. She was very shy and very timid, or not timid. She was very, very shy and quiet. And typically when you meet someone like that, you just automatically assume that they're timid and that they have a weak character, but that wasn't Kelsey. She was very strong-willed, and she was, if she believed something, you better believe she was going to tell you why. And she, even though she wasn't the upfront person, she wasn't super loud. She knew what she believed, and she had a very strong character.
Kind of see that in her mom too. Her mom seems like she's quiet, yet you can tell that she was on a mission to find her daughter and find out what went on there, and you even know now that she made those phone calls to Patrick, what's going on? Where is Kelsey? She wasn't just sitting back, being a meek little mouse waiting, for him to come to her. She was seeking out information from him.
Well, and yeah, exactly. That's a great great thing you picked up on there. She found out on Sunday, December 2nd, that she had called Patrick on that day saying, "Hey, what's going on? Why haven't I heard from Kelsey?" And he gave her the story, and she was down there the next day. She was going to get to the bottom of it. She wasn't just going to say, "Oh, well, he says such and such will wait."
She wasn't buying it. Yeah, she wasn't buying it. It's that mother's intuition. She knew something wasn't right. It was out of character for Kelsey.
Yeah.
So there was another thing that I've read a lot of people talk about, is the fact that she didn't hear from her daughter in 10 days. And that was another reason why they assumed that there wasn't such a tight relationship there. And I think that, yeah, go ahead.
Apart. Yeah, they live so far apart. I mean, I literally 10 minutes from my mom, and we might go a few days without talking, and she's not over there worrying that I've gone missing. And if I was living alone and if I didn't have a support system, then maybe she would keep closer tabs on me. But, coming from Cheryl's standpoint, Kelsey's got her fiance, she's got her job, she's got people down there that she's in connection with. So, Cheryl's probably thinking, if she's missing, someone's going to ask me.
And why would Cheryl have ever imagined that she would go missing?
Exactly. Yeah.
If something was happening or something was wrong with Kelsey and Kelsey was able to, she would have called her mom.
Exactly. And that's another key point, is if there had been something suspicious, she probably would have been keeping in closer contact with her on a daily basis just to check in. But she wasn't concerned about anything. Everything seemed fine.
Right. So knowing that her and her mom were close, and she probably talks to her mom about everything, if she felt in danger or felt like she was being sought out or there were weird things happening, we can probably assume that she would have talked to Cheryl about that and said, Mom, I feel really weird. This lady came to my door. This, it gave me a weird feeling. I think it's kind of safe to say that maybe she just chalked it up. I mean, she had a 1-year-old, and we all know what it's like having a 1-year-old. You're running all over the place and you're busy and you work. And I'm sure that, she had the baby going to a babysitter or some kind of a daycare while she worked. And, there's only so much time in a day to get things done. And I know what it's like having little ones. And maybe she just brushed it off, because Mike did say in defense of that, because I thought it was strange. I was like, if someone walked up to my door, I would think it was weird. But he said, you don't understand. That's how it is here. That's what people do. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's not strange. It's common practice here. It's a small town, and that's just what people do for each other. And even his wife vouched for that. She's like, I've done that for people. And I said, but a coffee? I mean, I can see, like when I moved into my house, my neighbor brought over a apple cake that she made, and welcome to the neighborhood. There was a purpose for it. So I didn't understand the dog story, but Mike did say, bringing your neighbor something, even to just introduce yourself, is normal practice there. So in Kelsey's defense, she probably just chalked it up as, this is how this little close-knit community is.
Yeah, and she was raised in a much smaller community than that.
Right.
Warden, Washington is almost not on the map.
Right.
Warden is right next to Moses Lake, so it's one and the same.
So that might be something that she would be a little accustomed to, or people, looking out for one another and being nice and friendly and neighborly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it brings me back to when I was telling you about the four-wheelers. I've always kind of had this vision of Kelsey. When I look at the Frazee family, I see, some pretty strong, burly women. Like Krystal is burly, his mother's burly, they're whatever they do. I don't know anything about ranching, but they're roping cows, is it? I don't know what they do. I know they have cows, horses, and all of that. She was out on four-wheelers with Patrick, herding cattle. I pictured her to be a petite little, girly girl. And we chatted a little bit before, and you said, no, she grew up on a farm.
Yeah. She grew up on, I don't even know, probably hundreds of acres of hay farms. So she was out there driving tractors, bucking bales, which that's the term for when you pick up bales and move them. She was not a weak,
No.
She was not a weak girl. And then on top of that, we were out camping and out white water rafting, and she took care of herself and
very active,
and was always cognizant of her appearance, but that definitely does not mean that she was weak or a prissy girl, because she was not at all.
Right. No, that's really interesting. I think that speaks a lot of, I've never, heard anything about Kelsey's personal life and, the types of things that she grew up doing. And it's fascinating to hear that she grew up on a farm and she was out there doing, as a farmhand.
Yeah.
And she's a tough girl. She's a tough girl, but she was also very pretty.
Yeah. Some of my favorite memories from when we were kids is, like I said, I would have sleepovers at their house, and during the day we'd go explore the farm, and where there would be irrigation canals that were probably 10 or 12 feet wide and 4 or 5 feet deep. Not anything dangerous, but there'd be just a tiny little metal pipe going across, and Clint and Kelsey would just run across that pipe, and and I'd be like, trying to balance my way across, and they're playing chicken on the thing, trying to knock each other into the water. This is when we're 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
She was not some prissy little girl.
She was kind of a tomboy, huh? She got dirty with her brother, and
they all were.
That's cute. That's cute. Her and her brother were pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very close. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In fact, it was pretty cute when they were in a new situation around new people. They're both very shy. Typically in a family, one will be the outgoing one and the other one will kind of hide behind, but they would be like stuck together trying to hide behind each other.
Oh. Like, you talk first. No, you talk first.
Exactly. That's exactly how it was.
That's cute.
And typical siblings, they could fight. I have a brother that's 2 years older, and we would fight so hard. And, just like, Clint and Kelsey were too, but then they were best friends at the same time. So that's someone that has an older sibling, you can understand that connection. You can't, that's my version of best friend material. If you can fight, if you can really duke it out and then be telling secrets the next day, you're pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a very nice family, very nice, close-knit family. Mm-hmm. Very tragic for them to lose her. Absolutely. I'm sure it's like, it's never going to be the same for them. And my heart goes out to them. That's real. And, and it's always these people that are so good and have no ill will towards anybody. And something like this happens, and it's just so disheartening. But let's see, we talked about Kelsey never expressed any fear, obviously, to her mom, or her mom would have, because her mom said in the interview that there was no problems that she knew of.
Yeah. She, as far as I know, she didn't suspect Patrick right off the bat. They trusted him, apparently.
Never had any reason not to trust him. Wow. People can sure hide who they are, can't they?
They really can. Yeah, it's scary. It really is.
And I bet you her mom was suspicious when she butt dialed Kelsey. I don't know if you heard those details. She said that she butt dialed Kelsey and then got a text back and said, "I'll call you later," or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then she never got a call. So I'm sure she thought that might have been a little.
Yeah, or maybe. I forget to call my mom all the time.
True, you get caught up doing stuff and you're like, "Oh shoot, I forgot to call my mom." Yeah.
Yeah, and she was a very busy girl. She had a full-time job as a flight instructor. And from what Patrick says, she apparently was studying for something. So I don't know what she was studying for, but if she's, working a full-time job as well as studying and, raising a 1-year-old, I'm busy and I've got a husband to help me out here. He's a work from home, real estate agent. So I can't try to do it by myself.
It sounds like they were doing some kind of like custody swap, like visitation swap between the two of them.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that was about. I do know that during the day when she was working, the baby was with Patrick. So
she didn't have to go to daycare. She was with him.
Correct, because Patrick worked for himself. He was a farrier. That's the person that trims horse hooves and puts shoes on the horse hooves. So he would take her with him to his different trimming appointments.
I think I heard a neighbor or somebody talk about him bringing the baby with him. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I guess I didn't realize that was like something they did every day, that he took the baby every day. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's safe to assume that Sheila Frazee was around that baby a lot.
Mm-hmm. Most likely.
If she was, they were watching her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on, I don't know what Patrick's schedule was like, but, if he was, making a full-time income, it's a farrier is I have horses as well, so I understand that the farrier's job, it's hard work and they're gone all day. They're here, early morning appointments to late at night if he was working that full time. So
oh, really?
I could see, he probably wasn't sitting around at home. He was probably taking her here and there, and this is all speculation because I never met Patrick or his mom.
Right. We did just hear that he would bring, some of his customers have said, that he brought the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I guess I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that he had her while Kelsey worked. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How is Kelsey's family doing now, with everything that's come out and now that we know it's going to go to trial?
Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, this is worst case scenario to lose your daughter to murder. But I live fairly close to Daryl and Cheryl, and we were very close before this even happened. So I've tried to keep in touch with them as much as I can. And honestly, I'm just blown away with how well they're handling things. I mean, not that it's easy by any means, again, but there's just been a whole community of people that have been praying for them, and they have voiced on several occasions that they feel those prayers, and they really feel the support of their church family and the community, and even, I think, strangers on the internet that have really taken a burden to this issue.
Mm-hmm.
People are praying that are just complete strangers to the Berreth family, and those are making an impact. It's nice. Really the incredible power of prayer that's upholding them, because no human mind can handle this easily, for sure. And not that it's easy for them at all, but Cheryl will post things on her Facebook page, about looking for the blessing in things rather than the things that bring you down. And
what a good outlook to have.
Yeah, and one thing that she posted from the very beginning, before they even had any answers, was when the train goes through a dark tunnel, you don't question the conductor and jump off. You trust the train conductor and ride it through. That's
her faith in God. That's her faith in God coming out, and that's what she's getting her strength from.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful a million times over that they had that faith in God before all this happened.
Because where do you turn? Where do you turn?
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know that they do have that faith, and they do have the strength from the community and probably their church.
Yeah. And another thing that's a little different about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, there's a lot of people that may not know this, but from the biblical understanding of what happens when someone dies is not that they're immediately in heaven or hell, but that they're in a state of sleep. So understanding that mindset of their daughter's just been murdered, they know she's not in pain. She's not looking down from heaven agonizing over her daughter being raised without her. She's asleep. She's at peace, and her family knows that. Interesting.
Yeah, I never knew that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a real well-known thing, but it's, when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, before he raised him, he said Lazarus is asleep. And multiple times throughout the Bible, death is related to being in a state of sleep. So until Jesus comes back the second time, she's going to be sleeping.
And a lot of people don't know about the Seventh-day religion. They don't know. A lot of people haven't even, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I know was because I worked for Florida Hospital, and they're owned by they're a Seventh-day Adventist church. So there were certain things, I came in and it's okay, they don't serve meat in the cafeteria, and we couldn't wear open-toed shoes. There was just these little rules, and I was like, wait, what's this? What's Seventh-day Adventist? What are we, And so it was all new to me, but I don't know anything about, those type of beliefs. I just knew kind of the social end of the belief system. So that's interesting to hear that probably brings them a lot of peace.
That wouldn't be heaven if you're up there watching all this agony going on, and just longing to be, even when nothing's going on and you're away from your kids, it's terrible. It's gut-wrenching, but she's asleep, and she's gonna see her daughter again, and
that's a very peaceful way to accept it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, my thoughts and prayers go out to her family and to you and all her friends that I'm sure are missing her, and knowing that you won't be able to talk to her again. That's the worst part. I've lost a close friend to a drunk driving accident. So I know that feeling where you feel like, oh, I should text her, especially now that you guys both had kids. There's probably times that have come up for you like that too.
Oh yeah, I'll be scrolling through my phone and her name pops up, and just just out of reaction, oh, I wonder what Kelsey's doing.
Right. Yep. Those little triggers. And it's going to be hard for her parents as those little triggers hit, and all the first holidays and celebrations and things like that without her being involved is going to be really hard.
Yeah. So, Mother's Day, Father's Day is coming up. My mind just popped that up yesterday. But so keep your prayers coming. Again, they really are making a difference, and there's nothing better that we could be doing than to be praying.
Yep.
And as far as the justice part goes, it's nobody knows the outcome until it's done. I mean, it's anybody's game at this point. We don't know how things work out, but again, we know who the final judge is. Yeah. And someone's going to pay for it in the end, and there's going to be no questions about what's right and what's wrong. Mm-hmm. So, there will be justice for Kelsey, hopefully on this earth, but for sure in eternity.
Thank you for sharing all of that with me. I know it's not easy, and you hold yourself together quite well. You really do. And I know she's very special to you. I don't want to make you cry, but I know that she's very special to you. I can tell. And just the fact that you're being strong and you're speaking out just because you want people to know who your friend was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very commendable.
Well, and at this point in time, it's been December, January, February, 3 months since she first went missing. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of tears shed. So
I'm sure.
Point, I've mostly cried them all out, but it still does creep up every now and then.
Oh yeah, it comes in waves.
I've done a million interviews too, so that kind of, it puts me in a place of kind of being numb, and I don't like that, but at the same time, it does help me talk about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who she was. So that's
well, you have a meaning to, a purpose for doing interviews, and it's a good purpose. Mm-hmm. It's not about getting the story, it's about getting the word out, because everybody's talking about this case. Mm-hmm. And getting the word out to those people of, and standing up for your friend. Mm-hmm. And I think that's awesome. And I would only hope that I could have a friend like you if I was in that position to stand up and speak out for me too.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking with me.
You're welcome. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. And like I said, all of us will be praying for everybody, throughout this trial. And as, go through that's going to be a difficult time. So
thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Nicole.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
It's always such an honor and a privilege to hear about these victims from their close friends and family. And I still, to this day, really appreciate Nicole. I hope she's doing well, and the rest of the Berreth family. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the interview with Nicole. If you did, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more true crime content. I'll see you in the next video. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists for more true crime content. And if that's not enough, you can join our Patreon. Don't have a tinfoil hat? It's okay. We'll make you one. It's that easy. See you guys in the next video.